It started with one of those dumb, precious moments figurines. I was at a resale shop with my friend Aubrey when I saw it. A cutesy statue, a girl with a bow on the top of her balloon-sized head, her disproportionately gigantic eyes fixed on a tiny dog, and there was a familiar diamond-shaped chip on the girl's shoulder. I stared at it for a moment, long-forgotten memories rushing back, remembering how I'd felt when I knocked the collectible off my Aunt Matilda's shelf, the mixture of fear and relief that the thing hadn't completely shattered. I was holding the figurine in my hand when Aubrey strolled up. "Don't tell me you're gonna start collecting those," she said, wrinkling her nose. "Or should we get you a muumuu to go with it?" It took me a moment to answer. "It's my aunt's. She loved these things. I don't know why she would sell it." Aubrey smirked. Maybe she got some taste. Frowning and ignoring Aubrey, I put the figurine back on the shelf, and I made a mental note to call my aunt when I got home. "Hi, you reached the voicemail of Matilda Carver. Please leave a message." I hung up the phone in frustration. I'd called a dozen times to no avail. It wasn't like Aunt Matilda to not return calls. She loved gabbing on the phone, even more so since she had moved an hour away from us, her only family. When a week had gone by and neither my mom nor I could get a hold of Aunt Matilda on the phone, and her local Molasses Soap police department remained unruffled by her calls, I decided that I was going to drive down and check on her. My mom used her friend finder app to verify that Aunt Matilda was at her house, and I hit the road. The hours passed easily, and before long, I was pulling into her driveway. About a year and a half ago, she had bought a giant house, one of those overwhelmingly large and haphazardly designed homes in the recently built neighborhood. Think AstroTurf, blue-white sidewalks not yet stained by the elements, and the eerie absence of trees. My grandparents were poor, and so as an adult, Aunt Maddie had used her professional success to treat herself to some of the more finer things in life. Her house lay on a large tract of land at the end of Rochester Lane, and next to it was an empty field, half bulldozed to make way for new homes. The late afternoon sun hung on the shattered lines across the concrete and dirt, and there was no car in the driveway, and all the blinds were closed. I got out and I walked to the front door, trepidation creeping down my neck. Morbid thoughts of what grisly scene lay inside bloomed in my mind. I'd half hoped that I'd find Aunt Maddie cheerily attending to plants in the front yard, but now, I was afraid that I'd smell the stench of a corpse or find the detritus of some hard drug binge. I let myself into the dark foyer, bracing myself to see a body sprawled at the bottom of the stairs, neck twisted at an unnatural angle. There was nothing. I deactivated the alarm using her security company's app and the code that she had given me. It was cool and dark and smelled very faintly of pet odors and bleach. I heard jingling in the distance. "Max?" I called out. The jingling grew closer until the familiar black-gray snout of her Labrador came looming out of the kitchen. A few happy yelps and licks later, Max and I explored the house. Aunt Maddie was gone. Her bed was made, clothes hung neatly in the closets, the refrigerator only stocked with eggs. Her car was in the garage, the keys in a bowl on the kitchen counter. Things looked normal, and yet they didn't. For one, all her precious moments collectibles were gone from the house. The last time that I had visited, they were all on display in her glass cabinet in the living room. An unfamiliar china set was there instead. Her desktop computer, the one she needed for her job, was gone from its place at her desk, replaced with a cream-colored journal and a silver fountain pen. Aunt Maddie had the sloppiest handwriting ever, and often proclaimed her love for computers whenever she needed to write something, even grocery lists. And the nude still lifes that peppered the walls had been taken down and replaced with the generic, abstract kind of art you'd see at a dentist's office. If it wasn't for Max, I would have thought that she had moved. I called Aunt Maddie's number again, feeling unsettled. Hi, Aunt Matilda. I'm at your house right now with Max. Will you please call me? I'm worried about you. I hung up the phone, and the quiet of the house caused the strangeness of my situation to sink in. Unsure what to do next, I went and grabbed my stuff from the car. I opened a soda and I sat on the couch, unhappily looking around the quiet house. I was in the middle of texting my mom an update when I heard the front door open. I dropped my phone and I ran into the foyer, and Max bolted ahead of me. I called out, "Aunt Maddie." It wasn't her. It was a short lady I didn't recognize. She was roughly in her 60s. Her grayish white hair coiffed in the short crop sported by so many older women. When she saw me, a confused smile spread across her face. "Hello, dear," she said. "I'm Alice, Matilda's neighbor. Do you know where she is?" And the question had already tumbled out of my mouth before I realized I hadn't introduced myself, but I kept going anyways. "She won't answer me or my mom's calls." "Oh, she's on a trip. Left just this morning. Actually, she said she needed to clear her head about a few things. She asked me to take care of Max while she was gone." A milk-bone treat appeared out of her gardening apron, and she waggled it at Max, but he stayed at my side. "Vacation? Where to?" "Oh, she didn't say, hon. She was upset, though. I don't know about what. Just said that she needed to get away and she'd check in every now and then." "You've talked to her?" "Yes, just an hour or two ago, in fact." She waved the treat at Max once again, but he remained unimpressed, his ears flat against his head, his normally swishing tail still. There was an awkward pause. I struggled to deduce what could have happened. That my aunt would apparently call a neighbor, but not respond to me or my mother. This was the woman who had Snapchatted me 20 times a day on her trip to Cabo San Lucas. "Well, I suppose I'll leave you be. Let me know when you go so I can make sure the dog gets fed. If you want some company, come on by. I'm sure everybody would love to hear from the famous Casey. She talks about you all the time." I stretched my face into a smile that didn't reach my eyes and I shook Alice's hand firmly. "Nice to meet you." The door shut behind her and I was alone once again. I decided to take Max on a walk to clear my head. I quickly realized there wasn't much to see. All of the houses were the exact same brown brick with gray stone, turrets and boxes and 3-car garages stuck together randomly, like a toddler playing with Tinker Toys. I sighed. My angry, judgmental thoughts had nothing to do with these houses. My worries sat in my stomach like an anchor, though. As I walked and tried to calm down, I noticed a lot of the houses had decorative cornucopias on the front stoop. At the entrance to the neighborhood, there was a similar display with some smaller human-shaped figures, centered neatly in a concrete island filled with acrid-smelling mulch. I could tell Max needed to go, so I urged him over to this no man's land. Max had just started squatting when I heard a scream. I looked up to see a man and a woman running towards me. Befuddled, I looked around. "Stop him!" the woman shrieked. "Get away from it!" Max whimpered and retreated behind me. I waved the doggy bags like a white flag. I'm sorry, okay? I'll pick it up." I picked up Max's turds and I hurried away, not in the mood to meet any more neighbors just yet. And glancing back, I saw the man and the woman standing reverently in front of the cornucopia display, murmuring. They both made gestures at it with their right hands. I was grateful to re-enter the gloomy silence of Aunt Matilda's house. I reheated some leftovers and I sat moodily in the empty room. I gave in and I called the police. The dispatcher got an officer on the phone, who told me in a kind but unworried tone that they could come and take my statement, but there wasn't much that they could do at the moment. It wasn't illegal or strange for a person to rearrange their house, sell some old belongings, or just go on vacation alone. They recommended we simply wait a little bit longer, and asked Alice to pass along any messages in case my aunt called again. Before the call ended, the cop encouraged me to try Miss Alice's peanut butter cookies. I hung up, feeling more confused than ever. I mean, they were right, none of this was illegal, but they didn't know Aunt Maddie. She wanted a big house to herself, but she wanted to make it her own. When she had first moved in, she told me that she wanted to be the weirdo on the block. She never changed herself for the sake of others, but now it seemed like she had traded the unapologetic person that she was for the same beige mediocrity that surrounded her. And I won't lie, it hurt to think that she might simply not want to talk to family right now, that she was struggling with something and didn't think that we could help. "Aunt Maddie, where are you?" I said aloud to no one in particular. I stared at the TV for an hour or two, not really watching. It occurred to me that I had never told my mom that I had made it, so I texted her with an update. "Arrived a while ago. Neighbors said that she went on vacation. Cops still say there's nothing they can do. Hanging with Max now. I'll probably be back on Sunday." And then I dialed my aunt's number again, this time to just hear her voice. I almost jumped out of my seat a few minutes later when the doorbell rang. When I opened it, Alice was standing there, flanked by two strangers and holding a plate of cookies. "We thought we'd be the welcome wagon since you came down here and all," Alice said. I almost flinched at the saccharine sweetness in her voice. I wasn't in the mood for visitors, but I couldn't come up with an excuse fast enough, so I let them all in. Alice had brought her husband Bill, and there was also Vicky, whose blonde bouffant was like a helmet. She introduced herself as a member of the board of directors for the neighborhood's HOA. I got the feeling that she brought up that fact a lot. When Bill spoke, I recognized his voice as the cop that I talked to earlier. "You sounded like you needed some company," he said. His voice was kind, but I bristled nothingness. And the next hour passed awkwardly, with my discomfort multiplying every second. I felt like I was sitting on a bed of needles as I sat, a glass of water in my hand and a peanut butter cookie in the other, at Alice's insistence. At first, it was the normal, forced kind of talk, not unlike the life updates I'd give my aunts and uncles at once-yearly holiday parties. They asked me questions while we all sipped water and ate cookies. Their politeness almost masked their uncertainty about what to ask. In response, I babbled emotionlessly about my hobbies, my family might agree, my tentatively plans for the future. No real passion or drive, just the passive, pre-approved scripts that I knew would translate into fractals of equal non-controversy. At first, I was just tense, the way I always was, in these kinds of probing conversations. But I started to notice odd things about Alice, Bill, and Vicky. For example, once we had sat down in the living room, I noticed Vicky staring at me like a hawk. Her blue eyes crawled over my face and body like a searchlight. I crossed my arms without realizing that I had. Another time, Bill asked me in a quiet voice if I had any siblings. When I shook my head and said that my mom had her hands full with just me, he and Vicky exchanged a pointed glance, thinking they had some weird, judgmental attitude towards only children, or single mothers. I brushed it off. The final alarm bell was when I saw Vicky was running her hands over the cushions, the pillows and upholstery of her place and the couch throughout the conversation. Eventually she stopped, but then she was holding what looked like a dark string, and pinching it with one hand and stroking the length of it with her other thumb and forefinger. Struggling to mask my curiosity and suspicion, I snuck a look at her when she went to take a drink of water. It was hair. My hair. It had to be. Alice, Bill, Vicky, Aunt Matilda. They all had light hair, and Max's wasn't that long. I felt oily, sweaty, and visibly uncomfortable. I swayed in my seat, struck with a sudden exhaustion. Before I could come up with an excuse to leave the room, Alice suddenly barked. "And do you think you'll want to be a mother, Casey?" I shrank back, intimidated. I don't know, but not for a while at least. I want to finish school and all, and..." I trailed off and smiled, shrugging, trying to mask the unease and coiling in my belly. The room swam before my eyes. I realized that I was still swaying in soft circles. Drugged. And the words flitted across my mind. It was like the first time that I had gotten high, and I felt a similar detachment, a fogginess. It had to be. I sucked in gulps of air and I fought off the drowsiness, yelling something about not feeling well, I stumbled to the bathroom next to the kitchen. I had the foresight to make sure the door was locked and the water was running full blast in the sink before I collapsed next to the toilet, forcing fingers down my throat. I knelt over the bowl until all the gooey, yellowish contents of my stomach had to come back up. Outside in the hallway, I heard hushed, low mumbling. The doorknob rattled. I lay down. The cool towel felt soothing against my burning, throbbing skin. If they were going to get in, I would not be able to stop them. I was too late and I was so sleepy. I closed my eyes, and it was only the sensation of Mac's rough tongue on my cheek that brought me back. Inch by inch, I rolled over to sitting. There was a sharp pain in my left side, and I realized my phone was in my pocket. I flipped it open and I read my one notification. A text from my mom with bleary eyes. Honey, it doesn't make sense. Friend Finder says her phone is still in Kansas. I think you should leave. I'm sorry you went out there, but I had a bad feeling. We can figure it out when you get home. I shook with silent laughter at the last line, slumped up against the toilet bowl. I slapped myself a few times and Max loitered anxiously at my feet. I turned off the water, which was still running in the sink. Outside, I heard nothing but silence. Alice or Bill or Vicky, or all three of them, could still be outside. There was only one way for me to tell. My eyes roamed the bathroom and settled on a wooden bookend that was on the shelf above the toilet. Clutching it, I slowly opened the bathroom door and I peered out into the hall. I clamped a hand over my mouth as I saw what looked like Alice standing in the dim light next to the door to the garage. To my right, I could see the living room. My purse, which held my wallet and my keys, sat slouched against the coffee table. I shut the door quietly and I got out my phone and went to the security system app. I hit the button I was supposed to use if there were intruders in the house. Alarms immediately blared throughout the house. I heard Alice cry out to herself in surprise, and then I heard her little feet pattering down the tiled hallway to the console next to the front door. Even if she had the code, I only needed a few seconds. I lunged into the living room and I kicked off hard in the opposite direction after hooking my fingers around my purse. Max followed as we both streaked down the hallway to the garage. I clicked the lock to the vertical position on my way out. Sure, Alice could unlock it, but it might slow her down and I needed all the time that I could get. I unlocked the deadbolt on the garage door and I flung it open. I couldn't help but emit a shriek when I saw somebody standing on the other side, all cloaked in black. When he turned, it was a grin that I didn't recognize. Max biting his ankle was all the distraction that I needed. As the man howled and went to kick him, I swung the heavy bookend at his temple. It made a meaty thud and the man gasped, tottering forward. I pushed him into the shelves at the opposite end of the garage and he went down hard, boxes of Christmas lights and gardening supplies showering on top of him. My feet slammed into the pavement as I streaked to my car. I got it unlocked. Max jumped in ahead of me. I twisted the key and I started it, tires screeching as I fled the neighborhood. Once I was going near the neighborhood exit, I started to try and calm myself down. I was panting with fear and adrenaline. I blew through stop signs, and Max whined from the passenger seat. I turned off at Rochester Lane after a few minutes, an absolute wreck, certain that there'd be a blockade or something to ruin the freedom that I'd worked for. But there was nothing there to stop me. I drove past endless wooden privacy fences, beautiful, 8 feet tall and all stained a uniform dark color. I tried to calm myself down a bit by reciting the way out of here. Left on Interverse, right on Addison, left on Wolcott, left merge onto the highway. I realized I'd soon be passing the empty field, and the Bodo's one next to Aunt Maddie's house, the one where there are going to be more houses. I came closer and I saw a glow. The field was illuminated by a flaming pyre, surrounded by cloaked figures, all dressed in black.